So this is Why is it just circling? Oh, Jesus.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We're going to get started. My name is Eli Sabin. I'm the Alder for Ward 7 and the chair of the Education Committee. And I will start out by reading the notice and then have my colleagues introduce themselves. Board of Alders notice, New Haven. The Education Committee of the Board of Alders will hold a workshop on New Haven Public Schools ESL program in person on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Board of Alders chamber, located 165 Church Street, second floor, New Haven, C2. Per order, Honorable Eli Sabin Chair. Attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 or 203-203-946-8582. Public comment or testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 o'clock on the day of the meeting. This meeting may be viewed on the New Haven Board of Alders YouTube page. I will now invite my colleagues to introduce themselves, starting with Alder Miller.
Good evening. Sarah Miller, Ward 14.
Sal Ponzo, Ward 17.
Rhonda Smith, Ward 30.
Thank you, colleagues. And I believe we have a presentation from the district and from a couple of teachers. If you want to come forward, please join us. We are grateful for being here tonight and looking forward to the presentation. And after the presentation, we'll have an opportunity for questions from members of the committee and then an opportunity for public testimony from members of the public. Before the presentation begins, please give your names and addresses for the record.
I'm Rosario Diaz, 51 Colony Road, New Haven, Connecticut. Katerina Markatova, my home address, 37 Sarasota, North Haven, Connecticut.
Keisha Red Hannons, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, 155 Hearn Lane, Hammond, Connecticut.
Good evening, Pedro Mendiolanda, Director for Multilingual Honors Programs, 155 Forest Lane in Cheshire.
Good evening. My name is Michael Suarez. My address is 15 Piscatello Drive in Brantford. Are we passing this?
Good evening, Kristen Dixon Mendoza. I live at 119 Vista Terrace in New Haven.
So good evening, Education Committee of the Board of Alders. As always, we're excited to come before you. And tonight we're coming before you to talk about our multilingual learner department. I don't know if he may show me the. Do you have a clicker or no?
I'm the clicker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lucas. So as always, we look at our strategic plan. This in particular, tonight we're talking about academic learning, but we'll also know that we're talking about equitable opportunities and outcomes for our students as well. If you go to the third slide, in particular, we're focused around high achievement for all learners, where all means all. And so in this particular, tonight, we're talking about our multilingual learners, right? And our unwavering commitment to equity, growth, and progress. And equity doesn't mean everyone gets the same, right? We give people, and in particular our students, what they need. And as you'll hear throughout this presentation this evening, you'll hear about services that we're providing, but you'll also hear about the gap that currently exists as well. And I think both are particularly of importance as we engage in this conversation. With that said, we do have, as you heard, teachers as well as administrators with us tonight to lend in their perspective. With that said, I'll turn it over to the Director of the Multilingual Learners Department, Pedro Mendia.
So again, good evening. Thank you for having us here today. It is a pleasure to be here with you to go over a little bit over the plan that we have in terms of the way that we service our multilingual learners. We do have a mission and a vision that it is aligned to the district's mission and vision, and specifically again focusing on our, what we are calling culturally and linguistically diverse population of students. And the mission just focused especially on ensuring that we are providing access to equitable educational opportunities. So we're here to let you know that it is the vision of the department that our students excel and that they compare to the rest of the population. There are specific guiding principles that lead our work, and I think that it is important that we highlight a few of them. If we are to provide the supports that our students need, every student is a student acquiring an additional language or acquiring English, but every educator, every teacher, should be focusing on how is it that they can support those students. The second of the guiding principles is to ensure that both administrators, central office, does everything that they can do to ensure that they have given access. New Haven, the city of New Haven, welcomed me 40 years ago when I came here as a student for whom English was an additional language. And it is a district that I've dedicated all my life to. It is a progressive district. It is a district that welcomes people from all around the world. And I think that you're going to see that the people that you have in front of you do make part of that diversity in terms of the population that we serve. As such, a department, we view, the expertise that our families and our students bring as an asset, something to contribute to our community. And we are just making sure that they indeed, have an access to all the, to everything that this great city and this nation has to offer. We begin first with a description of who are the multilingual learners. And there are a very specific group of students. Previously, they were referred as limited English proficient, something that is subtractive, negative. Then they became English language learners. Then the federal government moved to English learners. In New Haven, we have decided to refer to these students as multilingual learners because it describes more the assets that they bring with them, rather than just being students that are acquiring the English language. And there are students that are in the process of acquiring English as an additional language. As the current public school general enrollment is decreasing, one of the things that we are noticing is that our multilingual learner population continues to increase. Currently, about 22% of our student population, kindergarten to grade 12, are identified as multilingual learners. And the thing is that we receive students throughout the whole year. Not only in October, but we welcome them throughout the whole year.
If I could just interject why that is important. So our funding is based off of October 1 enrollment. So the funding that we receive now is based off of October 1, 2021, which means we're always a year behind. So essentially, we receive more multilingual learners in our district since October 1, 2021. I think when we were just at the most recent state meeting, we were up to over 200 students. We haven't received any additional funding for those 200 students that we received funding for based off of October 1, 2021. So that I want to underscore that for you as a point of where funding matters, and as we talk about equity.
So thinking of the schools in the district serve over 75% of the students identified as multilingual learners. And out of those, all the students, 17% are newcomers. These are students that have arrived from outside of the United States in the last 2 years. That's the definition of what it makes a newcomer. And as you're going to see, it's a very wide student population. So not two newcomers are, the same. The same way that not two students are the same, but I think that those differences are even greater. There has been an increase of 26% of newcomers from the average of the prior 2 years. The growing population of SLAC means students with limited, interrupted, or formal education. So we do have students that arrive, lately has been primarily from Afghanistan and from Central America. And in addition, we have unaccompanied minors and students that are experiencing family separation that continue to make significant proportion of our students. To underscore what Ms. Kisahanas was saying, these are the enrollment numbers for New Haven Public Schools, and as you can see, these are the numbers that we reported to the state as part of our October collection. But I want to bring your attention to the top right-hand graph because that explains exactly how is it that we are financed, to support these students. So Ms. Kisahanas was saying that the October 21st, 22nd, we reported 3,767 multilingual learners. We're in the school year 22-23, okay? And we are right now running with the monies that we got on October 22nd for the 3,767. We have 200 additional families that we are currently educating. We can talk about what are some of the strategies that the department does have to try to support, that student population. In the next slide, it gives you the average, who are multilingual learners and the grades in which they are enrolled in, okay, beginning kindergarten through grade 12. We have 70 different languages in the district, and this number goes up and down with the makeup of our, student population, representing 54 different countries, and then minority languages in the district, in the public schools. 82% of our students report Spanish as the primary language, Pashto 9.4%, Arabic, Dari, Turkish, and Mandarin. We have about 14.1% of our student populations who are duly identified. That means that they are multilingual learners and they have some sort of a learning disability. They are identified also as special education students. And we have about 32.5% of our multilingual learners are enrolled in attending a bilingual program in the city. The total number you can see on the top right on top of that slide is 3,987 when this report was created. So we're saying that the student population is very diverse, and we do have, 5 specific subgroups within our multilingual learners. I mean, we talked about the newcomers, students arriving in the last 30 months or 3 years. We have students with limited interrupted formal education that hopefully you will be able to hear from some of our teachers, what it entails to provide, or access to an education. We have the duly identified multilingual learners special education. We have long-term multilingual learners, and these are students that after, 6 years, they have not yet met the linguistic criteria to exit the programs, and that is proficiency as measured by the last links once annually being administered. And as a district, per Title III, we are mandated to track students that have exited the program in the last 2 years. So when we talk about, that the multilingual learner is 22% of the student population, when you count the students that have exited the program, there are many more students that we need to track. So in terms of programming that the city does offer to our families, we have still a few remainders of the transitional bilingual program. We have moved in the last 6 years to transition the bilingual programs into dual language programs, both one-way and two-way, and on the right-hand side, You have the schools that offer that programming. And of course, we have English as a second language in every single school in the district. And we also have self-content classes at the high school level. In terms of the current staffing that we have to support the 3,900
I was
plus.
just wondering, while we're here, if you could explain some of these phrases, some of these terms here, just so we can understand.
So let me begin by just transitional bilingual program. The state of Connecticut is one of the very few states in the nation that does have a bilingual statute, which tells us that anytime that we have 20 students of one language group in the same school, that we must provide them with native language supports to a certified teacher. The district does have mandated bilingual programs in Pashto English, Spanish English. At one point we had Arabic English, and we also had Mandarin English. But that number will change based on the student population. The shelter content classes, there are classes that are being taught at the high school, and it is teaching language through an area of content. Usually it's done through a co-teaching model. So you have a language specialist, who is a teacher, working in collaboration with the content area teacher, whether it's math, whether it's social studies, etc., etc. Dual language programs are additive in the model. Is an additive model. So that means that the goal is that the students will become fully bilingual. And by that, we mean, unlike the transitional, that it increases with the amount of time that you're in program. And the goal is just to learn English. In the dual language programs, the goal is that they become both Spanish and English fluent. And finally, English as a second language is what every other student receives, and that's English language development. The difference between a one-way and a two-way dual language program is that in a two-way dual language program, you have two teachers working with 52 students. One does the Spanish track, the other one does the English track. Okay? In the side-by-side of the one-way dual language program, you have one teaching, using both languages. So they might have instruction in the morning in one language and in the afternoon in the other target language. And our programs, they are 50-50, so they require that 50% of the instruction from time of entering program in kindergarten, that it is done 50% in English and 50% in Spanish. So what is the current staffing model that we have in the district to support all the 3,900 plus students? Currently, we have 38 ESOL teachers, English, the speakers of other language teachers. And we have 2 district coaches that support them, in addition to supporting the bilingual students, bilingual teachers. Then we have 10 part-time tutors who are not certified and are employed in some schools. These are supplemental supports that we put in place in those schools where we do not have a certified staff. And this is the part of the presentation which we are going to move into now. Because we do have 8 schools that offer bilingual education. We have 72 bilingual teachers in those schools. Some of them, they are also itinerant to support the mandated schools that the state tells us where we need to have a program. So they go from school to school. We have 5 native language tutors. These tutors are working specifically with our Pashto, population in some of the, higher incidence schools right now. And then we have a literacy intervention. So we hire 6 Spanish literacy tutors through, the bilingual program. Educating, a multilingual learner, it entails a lot of moving pieces. This graph is not intended to be, there are other people who are missing in this graph, and we just wanted to highlight, the most important roles. So we have the ESOL teacher as a language specialist, working very closely in collaboration with the general education teacher. The role of the school administrator is critical, because they really are the gatekeepers. They are the ones that are providing access. They are the ones that are ensuring, that when we talk about that equitable piece, that our students are receiving good programming and they're receiving all the supports that they must in order for them to have access to grade level content. The parental engagement, of course, it is important, not in the role that they play with their children, but also the role that they play, in terms of being stakeholders, to the school. One of the critical components of educating a multilingual learner is the idea of professional development. We understand that our students spend the majority of the time with a general education teacher. So it really is about how is it that we can build that capacity so that the general education teacher has the tools that they need to do that differentiation in terms of the instruction, that they understand what second language acquisition, that they understand what the cultural shifts that families are having, in order to support them. And hopefully you will be able to hear later on from some of the teachers, talking about how is it that they play that role as professional developer or supporting the general education teachers. New Haven does offer extended learning opportunities, for those students that need an add-on. Not only in the extended after-school programs that the city that are open to everyone, but we also have a specific targeted, programs for, those students, specifically in our, high schools, comprehensive high schools. And finally, the idea of resources that are aligned to the student needs. It is, critical again, that to support the multilingual learner, that those resources are aligned with their needs. In the next slide, and I'm not going to go over this slide because I know that you want to hear the voices of the teachers. It is just to bring you the importance that the general education teacher, the TESOL teacher, have in the education of the multilingual learner. That this is not the responsibility of the people that you have around the table, but that is the responsibility of the whole community to ensure that they do have the support. So right there, it just describes a little bit how the roles support each other and how they are a little bit different.
So you've heard about our programming that we have. We embarked upon a project that our Board of Education asked us to do, which was to define a gap in New Haven Public Schools. So we formed a staffing guidelines committee. This committee consists of administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, including central office staff, your school principals and assistant principals as well. And what we looked at all staffing up and down in the school. So in particular, we looked at our multilingual department and looked at the staff that we currently have, looked at the students, and then what's the need. So following this kind of graph you see, we asked ourselves, what are the current staffing levels? What are our students' needs? How many staff members do we need to adequately service our students? And then what is the cost? And so the next slides will dive into that. I want to underscore that this project that we embarked upon, we did a lot of research to see what were national standards. What does it take to provide an adequate education to a student that's a multilingual learner who's also qualified as somebody with SLIFE, who's had an interrupted education, whether a year, 2 years, or 3 years. What does it take, to adequately provide services to a newcomer? And I'll tell you, those metrics are hard to find and almost next to impossible. You have guidelines for special education, but for multilingual learners, you don't really have those guidelines. And so the team really took a deep dive in figuring out how many minutes would be adequate to provide services to the students. So we feel very confident in the information that you're about to hear because the team really, really worked extensively to say and look at each and individual child and say what they need. And with that, I'll turn it back over. Kristen? Okay.
This is picking me up. Am I supposed to? Okay.
So she-
No. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that means.
A little crackly there. Hi, everybody. So I am an ESL teacher at Wilbercross in the International Academy. I taught at Fairhaven for a long time prior to that, in New York City before that, in New York City public schools. It was an honor to be part of this committee, putting together these guidelines, kind of representing the teacher voice and particularly the high school teacher voice in all of this. So these recommendations are one ESOL teacher per 50 multilingual learners, and that's the same K-8 and high school, with the addition of an additional teacher in the schools that are really seeing a large influx of newcomer students, because we know that's more intensive. Conventional thinking might say that, well, high schools, you can have a larger caseload. I mean, we know that some teachers teach up to 125 students at the high school level. However, if you think about what it takes to get up to, let's say, a second grade newcomer, what it takes to develop your language up to the expectations of a second grader, it's quite different than being, say, a 15 or 16-year-old starting in 9th grade, having 4 years to get to that level that you need to graduate. So actually, the work with high school students in some ways can be more intensive. So that's why it's the same 50 in K as well as high school. We have the addition of multilingual coaches who are school-based. Our K schools have literacy and math coaches, and that model enables the coach to be part of the decision-making process in the school, participate in leadership team, SPMT, things of that nature. And so we are recommending school-based rather than central office-based multilingual coach in the schools that have over 20%. So the highest of the schools. Bilingual classroom teachers, so these are the people working in the dual language programs primarily that Pedro spoke about earlier. So that sort of stays the same, one per classroom according to teacher's contract, and some of them are doing that side by side, and some of them have their one classroom of students. So there's no real change there. We don't currently offer a high school dual language program, but it's something that could be explored in the future, particularly across the Maybe Hill House. And so we did put together some recommendations for what that would look like as well, but we don't currently offer that program at the high school level. And then the ESOL teachers in a dual language program play a slightly different role because the students are also getting that dual language experience. So there is some need for an ESL teacher, but the work is not quite as intensive, and so that's why the number 65 rather than 50.
So if I could go back to the idea of the multilingual coach as an additional person. Earlier I spoke about how our students spend most of their time with the general education teacher. The role of the multilingual learner coach, it would be that of building the capacity of the general education teachers. Obviously that they can adapt the content, obviously that they can differentiate. So we feel that it is a position that does not exist currently in the district, but that it is necessary. So what are the staffing needs based on these guidelines? So based on the guideline recommendations that took into consideration the teacher to student ratio, the percentage of multilingual learners that there are in the school, and the number of newcomers enrolled at a given school, we need an additional 38 ESOL teachers, quantified on an average of about 75K per teacher. That would be equivalent to 2.84 million in salaries to support, the rest of the schools. In addition, the creation of this multilingual learner coach, it would cost 1.3 million, in that we will need 18 of them for a total of 4.14 million. 2 weeks ago, we were, over at the legislature's office advocating for a change in the ECS form. we feel that it is important. It is important that our students do have access to an education like the ones from the suburbs. You know? We went and advocated for that change to expedite it so that they implement the fully funded formula, because it really would be a good source, you know, of some of this revenue. And here today, we're advocating in front of you, so that you know that when it is time for you to vote, you know, on the budget, that you know, you have the visual of our multilingual learners and the needs that this student population has. So what are our recommendations? Our recommendations is that we invest in filling the gap in the schools that currently have non-certified staff. The next one is that we place resources to fill the gap in the schools that serve 75% of our multilingual learners. In addition, the addition of multilingual learners coaches in schools with greater than 20%, and there really is a full body of research, you know, and rationale why these positions would be, you know, extremely important for our population. We're exploring a newcomer welcoming center for the families as another, you know, recommendation that we are making. And how is it that we need additional programming for the long-term health? With this, it ends up our you know, presentation, and we welcome any questions that the committee may have. Oh, Rosalind, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Did you have them? Did you want them to present their stories?
It's up to you in terms of the questions,
Yes.
so they can.
Yes.
So, Katrina, do you want to speak a little bit about your role?
Your role and your experience.
Yes, sure. I'm an ESL teacher at Martinez School. Our school is K through 8 middle school, and our population is roughly about 500 students, and 50% of the students are multilingual learners. We are a bilingual school. We're now a dual language program, which means we have bilingual classrooms with side-by-side model in grades K1, 2, and 3 now. And I'm an ESL teacher who is servicing multilingual learners who are in the regular classrooms. My personal caseload is 137 students this year. Luckily, I got some support in December, a tutor, but I still feel that I would benefit from more support. I do see my students in small groups, and usually it is from 6 to 8 groups a day. And these small groups are about 6 kids a group, that, and I feel like would even put less kids in a group, you know, to be more effective. Considering that, you know, we are, you know, I have been teaching ESL at Martinez for the last 10 years, and my general experience is 18 years in ESL. So, you know, I'm trying to do my best, and I'm just, and I'm saying that at Martinez, we do have really good percentage of kids who are graduating from the program, you know, considering that we don't even have, you know, enough staffing. We do a good job because, you know, we are providing a PD to our teachers. And our administration is on board with us. They're very supportive. And I would say, I still see the difference. When I am just by myself, we would have about 10% of kids who are graduating from the program. Well, do I need to explain the graduation process? Like, the research says it takes about 6 to 7 years to develop English proficiency in the language, and the ultimate goal is for the students to graduate from the ESL program. And we're doing very good with that, I think. But when I have a tutor or the second ESL teacher, if I remember, I had the second ESL teacher 5 years ago, we can do 15 or 17% of kids who are graduating. Well, this is just numbers. What is exciting for me is that now we have a bilingual classroom in the 3rd grade. Well, this is a side-by-side model where we have instruction in 2 languages, so half-day in Spanish, half-day in English. And by 3rd grade, we are noticing that kids are doing very well. They're progressing well in reading in both languages, which is so encouraging, which is wonderful. I think we want them to be truly bilingual, and that is what we are seeing. And I'm thinking if we would have this program in the 4th grade, that would be even better, and because, if you think about it, one language really triggers another language. They are doing good with both. So that's the idea that if we would have the staffing and the funding, we would do even better job. If you guys have questions? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Michael Soares. I am a teacher at Fairhaven Pre-K8, formerly Fairhaven Middle School, and I'm in my 20th year in New Haven. I started at Hill Central as what was then called a transitional bilingual 5th and 6th grade teacher. I had a classroom with both grades. It was rough. Before that, I was in the Peace Corps, and the Peace Corps had a saying that it's the toughest job you'll ever love. I would argue teaching in New Haven is probably the toughest job you might love. And I'm here, proud to be here, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention or thank the Board of Alders, Central Office, and Board of Education for our contract, which I believe will recruit and retain new teachers, these 38 teachers we need. Today I had a nice conversation with Principal Morales and some of the other ESL staff at Fairhaven, and an urgent concern or need appears to be the gap between our 2 newcomers classrooms. And I would invite you to come see them, because it's really a beautiful thing to see these children from all over the world working together. We had a K 3rd grade class with 2 teachers, a teacher and a para, and then we have a 4th, 8th grade class with 1 teacher and a para. And these children, in most cases, have limited schooling, extreme traumatic experiences. Many of them are from refugee camps. And as a parent myself, I often wonder, is it developmentally appropriate to have a 5-year-old with an 11-year-old all day? I wouldn't want my children in that situation. And that's the lens I'm coming from, saying that we should consider a 3rd option in the middle that's age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, and sustainable for the teacher. Because 1 teacher teaching 5 grades, as you know, is quite a task. So that's what I think is urgent, what's pressing right now at Fairhaven. As most of you know, Fairhaven has always been a welcoming place, a beacon for 100 years to the city of New Haven, welcoming people to the neighborhood, welcoming people to the country. And everywhere I go, I meet old folks who went to Fairhaven Middle School. And I hope that, there we go. And I hope that we can keep that tradition of welcoming people from all over the world and all over the city and all over the state, and do right by them. In order to do that, we need resources. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about my experience.
Well, back then it was called Fairhaven Junior High School. Still there, because we had the 9th grade in Fairhaven. I went 7, 8, 9. I'm talking about way back then.
And that's still memorialized in the masonry work in the front.
A couple years.
Yeah.
So I'm, though I have worked with younger students, I'm coming at this from the high school perspective tonight. And I did also have a long talk with my colleague Diana Cartagena from Hill House, sort of my partner in crime over there. She couldn't be here tonight, but she had a couple points she wanted to make sure I hit as well. So at Wilbur Cross, we have this beautiful vision of, high achievement, high graduation rates across all these subgroups of our multilingual learners. We have the International Academy, which I believe is in its 8th or 9th year since it was first formed under the Commissioners Network when Edith Johnson first became principal. So 10 years. This is our 10th year. So we know we need effective programming for the SLIFE students. We're seeing a larger population of the overaged and undercredited students. So a really common scenario is a 15 or 16-year-old, let's say from Guatemala, who maybe finished 4th grade and was out of school working for a few years. Difficult journey here, maybe a stay in, one of these casa hogares, someplace on the border where they were detained for a time, and now they're here. And they're plopped in the 9th grade, and they have 4 years to try to get that diploma and figure it out. So it's very intensive work. We have a lot of students who are learning to read for the first time, and we're really proud of the program we've been developing. We're offering new courses we're doing literacy intervention in both English and Spanish, sort of alongside each other in separate courses. So we're collaborating with the language, with the World Language Department on that, where we have a math foundations course, which didn't exist a few years ago, where we can try to get those students ready for Algebra 1. So there's a lot going on. We're trying to really leverage the College Before College program, the CNA program, the Bridge program at Gateway and Southern in the summer. We're trying to get our students access to those kinds of experiences. And we piloted teaching a Gateway course from the Gateway ESL program, actually housed in our school during the school day this year. And it's going really well, and we're really excited to continue that. So we want equitable access to these new manufacturing pathways that are starting up across in the next year or two. We want to make sure the multilingual students have access to that, which means our staff or a coach or someone has to orient those manufacturing teachers and teach them all these sheltered strategies so that they can teach those students appropriately. Let's see, I could go on. So the numbers at Cross, we are exploding. I don't know if you've heard, we're like busting at the seams. As of today, we have 445 multilingual learners. When I came to Cross in 2017, I'll tell you what we had. In 2017, we had 287, and we have the same ESL staff, and we're approaching double. The numbers are growing, and the team of teachers stays the same, and so that vision of the International Academy is being diluted. Pedro spoke about co-teaching. We now have to sort of triage and figure where we can afford to do that co-teaching, and it's hard to, we can't hit every kid. And so I did run some numbers. So we have 445 multilingual students. We have 208 who are in sort of our newcomer program, 136 in 9-10 and 72 in 11-12. So as those 9th and 10th graders move up, we're going to need more teachers to accommodate them. And that's just our newcomers. We have another 106 of the long-term Ls who are in the International Academy, but not in the newcomer program. So they get some supports. Some of their teachers have had some training. And then we have another 124 that frankly we can't service properly. They're in other academies. They're mostly the kids who've been here longer. But our 5 teachers, we kind of have to triage. We have all these new students. And so some of those intermediate and higher intermediate kids, they're a little below the radar because we just don't have the staff to reach them. We know what they need. We would offer them like an academic writing kind of seminar course if we had the staff to do that. We would look into co-teaching in their English classes probably. So it's hard. We want to do more, but we do the best we can with who we have.
We're going to let our supervisor a multimodal.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. And I just kind of want to highlight some of the work that we have been doing. And actually, we definitely need more staff. As you hear the teachers and the information, but I think it's important to highlight all the hard work they're doing. And I do want to say that in terms of the high school, we have we've increased our, first of all, graduation rates from 68.8 to 73.4, which is something to highlight. And we know, as Kristen was saying, for the high school that we keep increasing, but we actually have the same staff. So we're working hard and definitely can use more support. Also, we ensure that our high school students are enrolled in college courses as well, and we actually have built a partnership. So as they graduate, right, we want to increase their college retention. For that, we do provide some after-school programming for our students to ensure that the high school students continue in the right path. I do want to say that I'm a high school graduate from Cross, and I came from Puerto Rico, and I spoke no English. So I'm a part of the bilingual program for BoA Cross High School, and I'm actually really proud to say that. And if it wasn't because of my counselors and the teachers I had, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. We also have, I just want to share that we also have provided our high school students with a summer bridge program, so that every summer, juniors and seniors will go to Gateway and we help them transition. So what we have noticed is that we need to increase our college retention. So those are kind of what we're doing right now. And, I can go on, and we have the Newcomer Center, we have the ARCTEL to provide support for those teachers who would like to be crossing doors. And also we provide professional development. We have after-school academies for teachers, as led by our assistant superintendent and our director. So we provide monthly workshops to our parents, and I just wanted to highlight that. And definitely something that we would love to do is extend our bilingual programs in those schools that are K3 and K2, as Catalina was saying, because research does show that if ideally it would be great to have them on to K5 for those bilingual programs. KA would be great because our goal, like our director was saying, was for students to be bilingual and biliterate, right? You lose a language, you lose a culture. And that's something that we want to continue our students to have. Just wanted to share those highlights.
Thank you. And before we move to questions, I just want to say thank you so much for all the work you do. I can't really think of a more important mission for our city and the school district to be doing than helping welcome families from around the world and helping them make sure that they can thrive in our city and our country. So thank you. And now questions from members of the committee. Alder Smith.
Thank you. Once again, thank you all for coming out. It is greatly appreciated for the work in which that you do. But I have a question for the cross teacher. How many teachers that you don't have in Wilbur Cross? What is the total amount of teachers that you don't have in Cross?
Are you
Not
talking about
bilingual,
in
just
our program, the
Not the
vacancies?
program, just the total amount of teachers that are not in Wilbur Cross, that are, kids don't have classes for. Maybe Ms. Hannon can answer.
Yeah, I will get that information to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would
Okay,
be
I will
fine.
get you the number of vacancies.
And I asked that question because you're looking to bring in 38 more teachers into this program. I'm just, I think it's a great program, but personally, I think we need to fill up the spots of what we have now, where kids are not having a teacher in the classroom, to fulfill those and then fill the needs of these bilinguals students, because you said you went to Cross, and upon you going across, you're very successful in your language with your counselors and so on. I'm pretty sure the numbers of counselors were very grim, right? In which that you had to attend to the students and so on. but you made it out and you was very successful in making it out that way. Not saying that less is good, so I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying. What I am saying, because we have in the school where I am at, I know there was not enough teachers in Brennan Rogers. And we had to have 7th and 8th graders to be transferred out. And I know there's a teacher shortage through the whole system. And I would like to see the whole system be fulfilled with all teachers so that every school can have the adequate amount of teachers that is needed for each classroom, that kids, don't have to sit with a substitute or sit in an auditorium or cafeteria because there's not a teacher to fulfill that. So I just wanted to know what these numbers are, because I personally feel that we want to fill a whole nother program, which is a needed program. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying. This is a much needed program. I think this program that the New Haven Board of Education is offering to the bilinguals is an excellent program. But I want to see those first language students to reap benefits also by having every classroom filled up with teachers that are inside of it. So,
And if I can respond, and we didn't state it earlier, we put the numbers of what the gap is, but this is a phase-in model. So we would not be looking at filling all 38 teachers that are needed or in the 18 multilingual coaches, but we are looking at phasing it in over time. And the time that we stamped was a 3-year plan. So it's definitely a 3-year plan on ensuring that we meet the needs. So not anything we would do all at once, while also being conscious of all of our students. Because as you highlighted, there are a high number of vacancies, right, in the district as well. And so we, of course, would be steadily recruiting. I just advocated, we just assembled a team to go to a STEM education summit focused on finding diverse staff for science and math. So we have things going on concurrently, and this is just one of the programs.
So that would make better sense to me of the phase-in, and I just asked the next meeting that we come into to be very clear on what you're looking to do, than to put out these numbers to where we could think that you're looking for these 38 immediately.
Thank you, and thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
So if I may just add, I mean, in terms of the recommendations that we made, to both the finance and operations, when we presented last week, and here to you tonight, we are looking at where the gap it exists, in terms of the services that we are having across the district. And that is that we have schools that have non-certified staff providing the supports. So it's a matter of equity, Why is it that, why is it that in some schools we have students being served with certified staff, while in other schools they are not certified? So the recommendation is, let's work on those ones. Out of the 38 teachers, we might need 6 additional 7 teachers to fill in the gap.
Okay,
and then
I understand what you're saying. Once again, whenever you come into a meeting, be clear on the numbers of student and how you're planning on phasing it in. Because what you explained, it seemed as though that you wanted 38 teachers immediately. So just be clear on how you're presenting your information. That's all I ask. There's no other questions within that. That's all I ask.
If I could ask one question, just sort of follow up. It would seem to me that there are 2 slightly different issues here. One is the new staffing that we want, and then the other issue is the vacancies, which are, I imagine that most of those positions are a lot of those positions are already budgeted. So maybe you could explain a little bit of that, because I agree with Alder Smith. We need to make sure that we have certified teachers in every classroom, and that's got to be a top priority. But it seems like, from a financial perspective, there's adding new teachers to the numbers that we're hoping to employ in the district, and then filling vacancies that are already budgeted.
So in full transparency, many of these are new positions, okay? There are some that are budgeted. I don't have the exact number, but many of these are new positions to address. Remember the slide that had our enrollment. And as Mendoza mentioned earlier, there's the same staffing levels at Cross, but there's nearly almost 200 more students. And so in that case, we would be adding a teacher to the roster. And you'll see that across the district where our numbers have increased, where we're saying, oh, we need another staff member here to adequately service our students. Now, what Mr. Mendia talked about in reference to the non-certified staff, and the two of us, we joked about it maybe some months ago. I remember when I was principal at Southern Connell, and Mr. Mendia was the supervisor, I think, at that time of the multilingual department. And I asked them and pushed them on, why do I have a tutor servicing my students? My students deserve a certified teacher that are multilingual learners. And he reminded me that I was the first principal to bring that to his attention because I felt that strongly about I needed a certified teacher in front of my students. When I say all means all does mean all. And so when we looked at how we're going to phase in staffing, the plan is to address those students that are being serviced by a non-certified teacher first before we do anything else. And so for them, yes, those would be new positions because currently the department is balancing out the number of certified staff and tutors to service students. With that said, it's a necessary thing that we need. We do have some of this budgeted into our special funds and our general funds. Now we get into the realm of actually finding staff, where, that's difficult right now, given the teacher shortage. Mr. Medea just went to Spain to get us 10 teachers that will be extending for another year. And that gets into our recruitment efforts. And Ms. Medea can speak to you a little bit about things that we're doing to recruit to address the shortage. So yes, some positions are budgeted, but some are not.
Thank you, Dr. Switch. What I was trying to get is, I think, I understand the multilingual language learner staff request is new positions. What I was trying to get at is I think that a lot of the vacancies that Alder Smith is talking about are already budgeted positions where we're having trouble finding people. So it's not necessarily that those are, the new positions are in competition with the vacancies because we're just having trouble finding people for already budgeted.
Yeah, I think if I could, I think an example of that would be my former colleague, ESL teacher at Fairhaven School. She left for a $30,000 raise in the night and left and didn't come back. We have not been able to fill that position. In fact, we've struggled to even find folks to interview for the position. So in the meantime, I'm servicing kindergarten and 6th grade every day. In the past, I was kindergarten and 4th grade. I've absorbed that teacher's caseload. So I think we would all be hard pressed to find any teacher or administrator in the district to say that one vacant classroom is too much. And it impacts everyone, it impacts kids, and impacts adults.
If I may, I don't pretend to be the person to suggest how to recruit people, or thank goodness that's not my role, but I have been a classroom teacher. I've been a 5th grade, just regular classroom teacher with a lot of multilingual learners in the mix in that class. And I do think there's something to be said for if we are able to get out in front of the staffing shortage and staff up our program properly, the classroom teachers will feel supported and their working conditions will improve if that multilingual coach is in the building, supporting them, teaching them how to work with these students, pulling the small groups so that the 3 who really are behind on their reading can get that extra help, all the things that can happen when you have more adults in the building. We might not see so much turnover, and this might be a more desirable place to work because we don't have caseloads of 130 plus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. Any other questions from Alder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Medea, you mentioned exiting the program. Can you explain that?
So by that, I mean that when is it that a student meets the criteria to not longer be identified as a multilingual learner? So they need to demonstrate proficiency in speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So the state tells us in the last links assessment that we do annually, if their overall score is proficient or above, and their reading and the writing is proficient or above, then they don't no longer qualify as a multilingual learner, even though we need to track them for 2 years after.
Do they still get support after they're exited from the program?
So they get, it's mainly monitoring, what we do, you know.
So take a third grader that say exited the program, will they have to take the state test?
Yes, they would. Nobody is exempt from any of the
Do
assessments.
you have any data on students that have exited the program and how they did on the state test?
So we could bring that to you. Not right
I think
now.
that, I mean, because I think that would be important. I think it would be important. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Thank you, Alfonso. Alderman.
Thank you all very much for the presentation. And also I'm especially grateful for the dual language program, all these programs, but my family's really benefited from dual language. My children in a previous version of dual language went through pre-K through first grade, 90% Spanish. And I think what that does for kids in terms of their sense of self and identity and community is incredibly powerful. And so with that in mind, I wanted to ask about the distribution of these various versions of biliteracy and ESOL, and sort of what the philosophy behind the distribution of different programs is. If there's a goal to grow like the two-way dual, which I think a lot of people see as sort of the gold standard or not. And also how, from a parent perspective, how parents understand what the options are and are in a position to make educated choices about them.
So I think that you heard Kristen's voice, you know, and also Katrina's and Rosalind's in terms of program expansion. I mean, we will want these programs to the dual language programs, kindergarten through grade 12, if possible. You know, create a path plan, you know, for the high schools. The way that our programs are located is where we have the highest concentrations of Spanish speakers. It has been the goal, again, to expand to at least through 5th grade, okay? If not through 8th grade.
And expand dual.
Yeah.
To
And
be
expand
specific.
So the goal would be to do more two-way dual. Is that the goal, or?
So long as we can go ahead and find the staffing, you know, yes. I mean, I think that dual is the golden standard, and that it provides the opportunity for monolingual English speakers to become bilingual. Mm-hmm. In the one-way programs, the way that they are run, that opportunity is only afforded for the multilingual learners. In other words, no, we do not have Anglo students coming into a one-way program, you know, because it's specifically designed for the multilingual learner. The dual language program, it would attract, you know.
Right, understood. I mean, I think it'd be a beautiful thing if we worked toward New Haven being a district where everybody learns 2 languages. I mean, that would be a good place to be.
And I would just so you see all of the different programs. I remember when I became assistant superintendent over Fairhaven, and Fairhaven had transitional, you know, you had some shelter, you had a little bit of all in dual. And the reason why you had so many programs was it was based off of what was research saying at the current time, right? And so when I became assistant sup for Fairhaven, and we had this was prior to the current principal, the goal was to expand dual. And so each year we expanded dual, and the other programs kind of sunset out. And so that's why you see the way Fairhaven is currently set up. We were able to expand Clinton Avenue as well, their dual language program. So yes, we're working towards dual. Definitely, like Pedro said, if we can get 2-way, great, but we definitely want at least one way. And we're working on Martinez right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Just one more, Bob. So I just wanted to ask about how parents who are not English speakers interface with the system. I know I've gone into Translate for parents and parent-teacher conferences. Like, what is the policy and the operations at the front desk for teacher communications? How do we ensure that parents receive communications in a language they can understand and are able to be part of their children's educational process?
And that is a great question, and it's something that there is definitely room for improvement. I mean, when we speak, we report the 70 different languages. Some of them, they are minority languages. It's very difficult to, find speakers of those languages, but even for the other languages, we do have a translation system, that both our teachers, administrators, utilize to communicate with those families. That is what we are using, or the message that we are giving to our teachers. You need to reach out to a family. You can call this number and you can find a translator.
And I just want to underscore, so we're updating our Board of Ed policies right now. And I think the two of you are working on that policy. But one of the things that we are updating in our policies is mandating that any important meeting that is held on the school level, that we are responsible for providing someone to help with interpretation. And so we're bringing that policy before the board so that we understand that yes, we are an open city. Yes, we embrace everyone. But as a school system, we have an obligation, we have a responsibility as well to make sure that communication with families will occur. So we're working on that policy now.
I think that's great. I think some kind of know your rights communication to families with the guide, the information that the app is there, or whatever it is. Some teachers may not necessarily be that aware that it's an option. So I think some kind of communication to families so that they're in a position to ask for what they need and have tools to do it themselves. So that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Herrera.
Thank you. I don't want to say thank you for the presentation, but actually I truly want to thank you for the hard and stressful, overwhelming job that you guys are doing, especially your teachers that are teaching what you're teaching with the high popularity as bilingual, and with a challenge you had to. So thank you for that. Now, go back to the hire the new teachers, the policies and competition. I don't see that much competitions to fill the gap, to fill first urban and second, whatever we need for that bilingual. I believe that if we focus most on higher training quality teachers, take care of the contrast with the teachers and we don't lose. I think that will help to fill the gap in many ways, in many levels. Because if you have a brand new teacher in the rush because we need to fill this spot, we are creating several gaps already in there. If you hire a person that is prepared to work both ways, we are looking at in here to see, okay, we have a teacher who's gonna help versus is capable to understand. This person is not capable of learning, or is a language barrier, and they become the labels, which is very scary. We need to be careful that not because a person is not capable to comprehend the language, is not comprehensive, is not capable to understand, to learn. So this 38 or 48 or 50, they're always going to be more and more because the payment is growing up. It's growing in many levels, in Spanish and other languages that still coming. So that means I'm glad to hear that you guys are changing the policies because the policies need to be flexible as the community is growing. So the budget, it is important, yes, but I'd rather to look at it as a competition. We figure out first what is empty, please look at it, like I said, higher quality teachers. In bring like I completely agree with Ms. Honda. Says, be clear, what is what you're asking? In numbers, not only for what categories, but what it's gonna accomplish in the long term. I'm really grateful for you guys doing this. And I completely agree. If you had at least 2 or 3 more people helping you to help these kids, that will extend for a full classroom. One more thing. I'm very concerned about the high school kids that don't have the same kind of help, because that is helping them in their self-esteem. They create bullying, and that is scary for me, because in that age, well, we have to be going past the time. Kids are cruel, and they say whatever is in their mind, but whether in a high school level is a bigger problem. We are going now with a young adults, becoming young adults. Please, someone trying to figure out the urgent, get that kind of help, while they have the counselor to help these kids. They can be dangerous to become these kids not being understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate you greatly in what you've said, and agree. And I think that it's about relationships with the kids and the families. And when you're understaffed and your back is against the wall, you don't have time or energy to build relationships with your students or their families. And I think that, I mean, that's sort of the hard line, or the elephant in the room, is we want to know our kids, we want to know their family, we want to support them. But when you have 120 kids or you have 500 kids, it's hard to individualize that, to build those lasting relationships. Many of us who have been around, we see children now that are adults, and they remember us because we built those relationships and we remember them. And we can't get too far away from that.
Yes, yes, thank you. Definitely, that's exactly my point. We cannot separate the budget for the grant or the value, what is really happening here. Reality is, just look at a New Haven Jalameño who speaks Spanish. Bottom line. What are our students? They don't have that kind of help in those levels. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Any other questions from members of the committee?
I have just one more, which is somewhat tangentially related, but I want to acknowledge that Wilbur Cross was closed today because of a valve issue, like a flood in the basement. And it's also been brought to my attention recently that Fairhaven School, which is in my district, has massive maintenance issues, like water falling on children's desks. I got some complaints from families and worked with the school to develop a list. I know it's not unique to these 2 schools, but I do think it's notable that the largest high school, the school with the largest number of ELL students, and the largest pre-K through 8 school, with the school the largest numbers of those students, both have really major maintenance issues. And it was my understanding that ESSER dollars were going to, not fix everything maybe, but enable us to really address some of these big issues. So we should not have school being closed over a maintenance issue, and we should not have water falling on children's desks. And I just want to, I don't know if you have any insight on what might be going on there, but I just wanted to note it because it really is an equity issue for these kids.
We have allocated almost $14 million out of our ESSER for facilities. And so I will elevate these concerns that you just raised to our Chief Operating Officer. I know the valve has been fixed at Wilbur Cross and school will resume tomorrow. I do not know the intimate details of the issues, but I also will elevate the issue after Fairhaven to see what's happening.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll respond.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Any other questions from members of the committee?
Briefly.
Oliver.
I tend to that a lot.
Do you have a question?
Yes, and when it says, when you say, when you say lose the language, lose the culture, what are you guys focus to help families that learning the language, you're not losing your culture, regardless English or Spanish? Because I know this is a big challenge for you guys with the parents. How you guys approach these ideas to convince the parents that the kids need to be learn 2 languages?
I can jump in. So we actually provide some workshops with families, and we offer, so when families come sometimes to our office and our teachers, we do tell them it's very important for, our children to be bilingual. I have 2 children of my own and they're bilingual. And we share the importance of being bilingual by culture and keep their language at home. Do a lot of reading in the language you only know. Talk to them, tell them stories. And then when they also come to school, we tell them that English is also important. We value both languages, at home and at school. We are integrating a translanguaging strategies, which means children get to learn English, learn Spanish, and teachers get to see that as an asset. So we want families to use their language at home. I think we value it. I think it's important. And it's very important for children to be bilingual. So our district promotes a lot of that.
And how the parents react to that, the parents.
Parents are happy. I mean, a lot of parents, quite honestly, when they come in and we offer dual language programs, they really want their kids to learn both.
I just think it's also important to note that research shows that when children are strong in their first language, they can transition quicker and more effectively as a second language. So when I'm conferencing with children's parents, I often say to read in Spanish, read in Mandarin, read in whatever, because it's going to pay off in the future. And it has. I mean, research has shown that time and time again, that a strong first language allows you to learn your second, third, fourth.
Sorry. So just one other thing to note, all of the best practices in the English language development and the sheltered content programs, even all the schools that don't offer a dual language approach, all the best practices include lots of using the first language as supports, translanguaging, where they're encouraged to talk it out with a buddy in their first language and then come back to whatever the task is in English. There's a lot of dictionaries, there's a lot of subtitles, there's a lot of multilingual stuff going on, even in the ESL classroom. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find an ESL teacher in our district at this point who is one of the old English only guard. I mean, maybe there's one floating around or something, but I don't know them. So, yeah.
What I would point out is the parent, the one that makes the final decision in terms of the type of programming that they want for your child. I mean, our office sees every single parent. We screen them to see if they are qualified as multilingual learners. We give them the options in terms of the programming that the city has to offer. And then it is the family, the one that determines, I want an ESO program, I want a bilingual program. Some other families refuse services. They say, hey, I want my child to just, be immersed in that language. But again, it is the family, the one that makes the choice in what type of a program, their child wants to be a part of. And they can, at any point, also change. They can, as long as they do it in writing, this is not the best option for my child. And again, our department, all that it does is screens them, gives them the option. We have a separate office of choice and enrollment that will find the placement, for those students.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Alder. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you very
presentation.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Appreciate it.
Very good.
All the work you do.
Thank you.
We'll now have public testimony. I think I have. Is this the sign-up sheet? Tasia Kolek, please come on up. Thanks for being with us this evening. If you could say your name and address for the record.
Yes,
That would be great.
it's right here.
That's perfect.
Tasha Kolar, instructional coach. I live at 354 Civil Street in Orange, Nebraska. So My name is Kasia Kwolek, and I am an instructional coach for New Haven Public Schools Multilingual Learners Department. I have been with the department for 13 years total, 7 years in this role as a coach. And I would like to begin by saying thank you for taking the time to listen and to learn about our department and the students that we serve. All districts across Connecticut are mandated by the federal law to ensure that multilingual learners receive specialized educational services to meet all of their linguistic and academic needs. It is a civil right for our students, and I am here to speak to you about what our department does and what we currently are providing to our students, and what I think that are some areas where we could need additional support in order to ensure that we do give our multilingual learners the best possible education. As you heard in the presentation, our schools support nearly 4,000 identified multilingual learners, representing over 20% of our student body. Those students come from 54 countries and speak over 70 languages. That number changes, sometimes daily, and it has been increasing. Additionally, the makeup of our student body has changed. Currently, the majority of our students are in grades K through 5, so elementary, and are United States-born speakers of other languages, mostly Spanish. Our second highest population of students are either refugees or students with directed formal educations. These students receive their instruction in a variety of programs, and I am proud to say that New Haven supports multilingual learners in every possible program and configuration that you can come up with. We have ESL classes, we have a newcomer center, we have sheltered content classes, and we have schools with biliteracy programs. Our programs are in place for our students, and we have plans to continue to strengthen them and to expand them to new grade levels. As you had a chance to see, all of the teachers and tutors in these programs are supported by only 2 full-time coaches, me being one of these people. And we have also 1 part-time coach to support some of the bilingual classes. Our department has 1 director and 1 supervisor. In the meantime, the scope of our work covers curriculum, I'm going to read this off now. Curriculum, attendance, instructional strategies, professional development, assessment, dually identified students, data analysis, material selection, collaboration with content area departments and community members like Iris, supporting parents, working with registration, college and career pathways, summer programming. So that's just to name a few of the things that we do every day. Even though we all work very hard, there is only so much that we can do to ensure that teachers feel supported and provided with adequate professional development, modeling and coaching time, that parents feel heard and involved, that students have choices and opportunities. I work with over 20 schools helping teachers and tutors who are often split between 2 schools, or like Ekaterina provides services to over 100 students. And these teachers and tutors are doing this to provide any kind of service to multilingual learners. Well, according to me, any kind of service is not good enough. This is not what our students deserve. Our students deserve the best education we can get them. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify. This is my first time, so I'm pretty nervous.
Great.
I hope that you can see the wonderful things that we do in New Haven daily, as well as our needs for our programs, mostly the staffing. No amount of space and materials will make the difference if we do not have enough teachers to educate multilingual learners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from members of the committee? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Next, I have Emily. You could say her name and address for the record.
Good evening. Emily Nguyen, 125 Alston Avenue, New Haven. Good evening, alders. Part of my phone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Emily Nguyen. I am a resident of New Haven, a parent of 2 students in the dual language program at Daniels, and an ESOL bilingual teacher at Roberto Clemente Leadership Academy. I'm grateful for my colleagues and district leaders who are able to present a comprehensive presentation for you tonight. I'm here to show support for their vision and also to bring a voice to the needs and opportunities of our students at Roberto Clemente Leadership Academy. My ESOL colleague Kelly Hebrink and I support Clemente's 134 multilingual learners. Our students are currently split primarily between Spanish and Pashto, As of this morning, we had 63 speakers of each, but as we know, it changes on a day-to-day basis. We've seen a substantial increase in our students who speak Pashto in the last year and a half with the current refugee crisis in Afghanistan. And we've also welcomed newcomers from Central and South America this school year. As our newcomer multilingual learner population has increased, we are also noticing a trend of refugees who arrive with limited or interrupted formal education. SLIFE was the term used in the presentation. And while SLIFE is a label typically used 4th grade and above, we're finding many of our K-3 newcomers are arriving without any formal schooling experience or literacy skills in their home language, which means the supports they need on how to do school is substantial. The additional staff would help our students to learn the expectations and the culture of school, in addition to build up their literacy and numeracy skills so they can access grade level content in an equitable way. The saying goes, it takes a village. Kelly and I collaborate intensively on an ongoing basis with our school-based health clinic, with refugee resettlement organizations, both IRIS and SIRI, mental health providers, volunteers, community organizations, and we seek out resources through a variety of platforms and our own personal networks. We ensure our students have everything from uniforms to properly fitting sneakers for jam, space for midday prayer, food that is safe and halal as needed. We source instructional materials and strategies and share them amongst our colleagues. This is particularly important and time intensive, as the resources for Pashto are limited and pretty elusive as compared with, say, Spanish. We are developing expertise in supporting older students who do not have home language literacy skills. And as we work to best serve our students, we're particularly hopeful for the addition of these school-based multilingual learner coaches at schools with higher than 20% multilingual learners. New Haven has some of the best and the brightest amongst our ranks, but as the saying goes, there's only so many hours in the day. Even our newcomer multilingual learners spend most of their day with their general education classroom teachers, and adding capacity for school-based coaches would provide targeted, embedded, and ongoing professional development for all of our teachers and staff, and it would be a game changer for our students. Building expertise among staff and collaborating across grade levels could make transformational gains for our multilingual learners. So in closing, I want to say it's an honor to serve my students at Clemente. Choke up thinking about them. And it's an honor to have such experienced and skilled colleagues to work alongside. I appreciate the interest and the support of the committee here this evening, and I hope we're able to continue to work together so that the next generation of New Haven will be even better yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if you and Ms. Quallett may be able to share your testimony with our staff, Jessica, so we can have access to it. We got a question?
For me? Yes. When you mentioned about the student coaches, what will they actually be doing with the students?
So what I envision them might have more nuance than what is envisioned by our leadership in our department. But I can speak to in terms of in our building or in other buildings that have literacy coaches or math coaches in which they're running ongoing professional development with teachers. So they might problem solve for a particular subset of students who are having a hard time making gains. They push in, sometimes they pull small groups, but it allows this ongoing access to someone who's going to work with you on a particular content area or particular skills with students as there's a demonstrated need, in a way that, you know, I speak just from my own experience of me and my colleague Kelly. We wish that we could support our general education classroom teachers on an ongoing basis. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I ran small PD sessions during our grade level meetings, but it meant I had to swap out instructional time from my own students in order to do that. And so a coach would be able to build into their schedule time to be able to support teachers on, like I said, where there's demonstrated need on particular skills, help them problem solve things that are coming up. in terms of building the capacity within the classroom teachers, I think back to what Ms. Mendoza said around equipping our classroom teachers with the skills and the knowledge so that they're able to better serve the kids in front of them and not have this frustration level that might cause them to seek a different job elsewhere, for example.
So what would be the difference between the coaches and the paraprofessionals?
So a coach is typically someone who has been a teacher for many years and has built an expertise. Paraprofessionals are support staff in our buildings. They might help a little bit with small group, but generally they're there to support the teacher's efforts.
So you're looking for an extra teacher to help out? In other words, with the coach is an extra teacher? That's certified, right?
Yes. So yes, I'm sorry to clarify. Yes, they're certified teachers. They have experience. They coach the teachers. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? I would say second time, do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? And third, do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, motion to close the public portion of the meeting.
Second.
We can move to the second. All in favor of closing the public portion of the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Public portion of the hearing is closed. Any discussion?
I make a motion that we close this meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I give my question.
All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you so much for being here today.